Yo, Larry, what are you doing?
Yeah, dude. So you see that your compound V stuff from the boys?
Yeah.
Dude, I got powers from it.
Show me. What'd you get? Whoa! Hey, this is cool and all, but why are you doing that pose?
That's my planetary power pose.
No, that's lame. Why are you doing that?
I'll do something else. I'll do something else.
Yo, I saw that. Do me. What did you do to my dog? Just do my pretzel.
If you want to check out all the amazing clothes they have for yourself, all you have to do is go on intotheam.com. They're currently having a 4th of July sale where you can get 30% off of their entire store. The sale ends on January 8th. And if you want to get an additional 10% off, you can use my code LarryLurr at checkout.
Pretzel. It's so nice and soft though, the pretzel.
Hey guys, Larry here, and for today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the biggest character downgrades in competitive Smash history. So what I mean by this is that in one title, the character was really good, and then in the very next game, they ended up being really bad. Just to clarify, the characters in this video I'm going to mention are really good at the end of their game's competitive life after all the patch updates, if there were any, and in the very next game, started off really bad. So I'm not going to be including characters that got nerfed in a game through balance patches, but if a character started off bad at the beginning of the game's life, ended up getting really good at the end and started off bad again in the next title, they're fair game. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, take a guess in the comments on what characters you think I'm going to mention, and don't forget to like the video. With that out of the way, let's get started. Let's start off this list with Captain Falcon. So coming from Smash 64 to Melee, Captain Falcon got some pretty good upgrades. His forward air in 64 became his neutral air, and his new forward air would be the knee, probably one of the most iconic moves in Super Smash Bros. On top of this, his airspeed got buffed, making it easier for him to perform the many combos and follow-ups he has. He did get some nerfs such as Falcon Punch being significantly slower, making it much harder for him to combo into the move, but overall he's still a really good character and roughly around the same spot in the tier list he was in at 64. Which is impressive considering the cast of playable characters more than doubled. When people think of Captain Falcon, I feel like Melee Falcon is the version of him that comes to mind, over even his main game title, which is sad, but that's what happens when you don't have a new mainline entry in like 2 decades. I'm sorry, F-Zero fans. He's super fast, has a lot of flashy combos, and can take stocks in a lot of crazy ways. So why did I say all that? Because Brawl Falcon, the version of the character that came after Melee, is nothing like that. Due to Brawl having significantly less combos, Falcon doesn't really have any of that fast and crazy combos he could get in Melee. He basically gets 2 guaranteed hits, and that's about it. His iconic knee is significantly worse than it was in Melee, and the worst the move would ever be. It's significantly harder to land the sweet spot on the move, and even if you do, it's not as strong as it was previously. Overall, Falcon's kill power in general is much worse than it was in Melee. The only thing he has going for him is that he's still a fast character, but with nothing else to really help him other than that. Melee Falcon is a fan favorite character due to what I said before. He's fast and can pull off these crazy and flashy combos. Brawl Falcon is a fan favorite as well, but not for the same reason. Even though he's a shell of what he was in Melee, people still like him because now he's a low tier hero. In Brawl, Falcon is considered one of the worst characters in the game and sits at bottom tier. So in Brawl, seeing Falcon in competitive play was hype because of how bad he is and just how rare of a character he was in general. It's even more exciting to see him win for that reason.
Wow. Wow, what did I just see right there?
The crazy thing about Marth is that he ended up getting downgraded twice. The difference is that Marth coming from Brawl to Smash 4 ended up becoming a really good character again through patch updates. For those of you who don't know, Marth at the beginning of Smash 4 was horrendous. He's probably the most buffed character in Smash 4 through patch updates. It's either him or Mewtwo. He's gotten so many buffs that it would be easier to talk about the moves that didn't get changed. I think the only moves that never got buffed were his counter, forward smash, and up smash. So in the beginning of Smash 4, the reason why Marth was so bad is that landing his tipper attacks, which is how he closes out stocks, was harder to do. Most of his attacks on shield, even if you landed the tipper hit, were not as safe, so it was easier to punish him. A lot of the moves were buffed by either making it easier to land the tipper, giving it more damage, range, knockback, less end lag, or sometimes a combination of everything. One of the biggest improvements he gotten for was that they buffed his jab 1, allowing him to combo out of it with other moves. So after the buff, he could do jab 1 into some of his tipper attacks to get high damaging combos or even close out stocks. Before all the patch updates, he was considered a low to bottom tier character and ended up becoming a top tier at the end of Smash 4. Going to Ultimate, pretty much the same thing happened. They made him one of the worst characters in the game. To put even more salt in the wound, in the beginning of Ultimate, Lucina, his Echo Fighter, was actually one of the best characters in the game. The reason he was so bad in Ultimate is that, like in Smash 4, they made his tipper hitboxes more difficult to land. They also removed his Jab 1 combo that he had in 4, so he no longer has an easy to do combo starter from a grounded move. He did get some buffs throughout Ultimate, but unfortunately, it was not enough to make up for the things he lost in the previous games. Well, I mentioned Mewtwo already, so might as well talk about him too. Mewtwo ended up being a DLC character for Smash 4 after completely missing out on Brawl. Normally when you hear a character's DLC, you're expecting them to be really good, but Mewtwo was not, initially at least. Like I said, he ended up being one of the most buffed characters in Smash 4. One of the major things they did to improve him was give him better mobility stats. His ground and airspeed would get a noticeable improvement, making his combos work a lot better, and just being a massive quality of life change in general. Also, thanks to him disappearing when he air dodges combined with his airspeed, he is one of the most difficult air dodges to catch thanks to Smash 4 air dodge mechanics allowing you to do more than one in the air. With all the improvements he got in Smash 4, Mewtwo would end up being a top tier. In Smash Ultimate, a lot of unfortunate things happened to Mewtwo. Thanks to the game's mechanics and hit stun changes, Mewtwo's combos wouldn't be as good as they were before. The change to air dodges hurt Mewtwo a lot since he can no longer do multiple air dodges to make it difficult to track his landings. The biggest nerf to Mewtwo was his tail hurtbox being bigger than it was in Smash 4. This means it's a lot easier to hit Mewtwo in general. When he's running away, he'll actually extend his hurtbox due to his tail stretching out behind him, so he has to be careful about having his back turned to his opponent. This also makes combos work a lot better on him since his hurtbox is much bigger than it was in 4. One other thing this change did was make all of Mewtwo's attacks that involve his tail less disjointed. So he's trading or flat out losing more in exchanges than he would previously because of this. It doesn't help that Mewtwo is one of the lightest characters in the game, so he's taking way more damage in spots than he would previously just from being in a bad spot or trying to attack. It's also easier to shield poke him because of his tail. At the beginning of Ultimate, most people had Mewtwo as a lower bottom tier character due to the flaws I mentioned. Throughout Ultimate's life though, Mewtwo has gotten a lot of buffs. They even made him heavier and made the hurtbox on his tail smaller. And with all the buffs he got, Mewtwo is now widely considered to still not be good. Falco coming from Melee to Brawl received a good amount of changes to his moveset. A lot of his attacks were changed specifically to differentiate him more from Fox and make him seem less like a clone character. Surprisingly, even with the changes made, Falco still ended up being a top tier character in Brawl. His zoning capabilities were actually better than they were previously. Now he can shoot 2 lasers from one short hop and auto cancel it. They also increased the length of his Phantasm and made it so that there wasn't a hurtbox on roughly the first quarter of the hitbox. And he had down throw chain grab combos he could do on every character. His downer was nerfed, but it was still one of the best spikes in the entire game. He was great, and they gutted him in Smash 4. His lasers could no longer be auto-cancelled, it has more end lag on it, travels slower, and goes a shorter distance. This was Falco's best neutral tool, and most of the ways he used it in neutral no longer worked. His Phantasm has more startup, travels a shorter distance, has a hurtbox throughout the entire move, the hitbox ends before Falco stops moving, and he can no longer cancel it. It did get one huge buff, which is that he no longer goes into freefall after using it. His downer also got massively nerfed to having much more startup, end lag, and much less knockback. Due to Smash 4 removing chain grabbing, Falco's down throw can no longer combo into itself, but he could still combo out of it with different moves and can now combo out of his up throw as well. He got some other buffs such as his back air having much more kill power and far less end lag, on top of his forward air being a lot more usable compared to Brawl, but overall, because Falco lost majority of the strengths he had and didn't get nearly enough changes to make up for it, he would turn out to be one of the worst characters in Smash 4. He even got a lot of buffs throughout the game's life, but it was not nearly enough to make him a good character. Despite not being the best character in the game, Jigglypuff is probably the most hated character in Melee.
Who threw this at me? You know how hard I work on here?
Her amazing airspeed, multiple jumps, backer combos, edge guarding, and her insanely powerful kill move Rest has been terrorizing Melee players for years. It comes as no surprise that in the very next Smash game, Jigglypuff would be nerfed to the ground. To be honest, the main reason Jigglypuff is as bad as she is comes from Brawl's game mechanics. One of Jigglypuff's biggest strengths was how effectively she could combo the opponent, and Brawl severely lacks combos relative to Melee due to there being far less hit stun. This means there's more neutral interactions and more possibilities of trading hits, which is almost never in her favor since Jigglypuff is the lightest character in the game. Her edge guarding is far worse thanks to a lot of characters in Brawl getting massive recovery buffs and changes to the ledge mechanic. The final nail in the coffin for Jigglypuff was the nerf to her rest. It was a much weaker kill move, making it less rewarding to land, especially at lower percents. The attack sends the opponent more vertically now, so if it does kill, you're far less likely to get punished, but on the other hand, if it doesn't kill your opponent, there's a better chance of you being punished. It also does noticeably more damage, but getting more damage and less kill power is a horrible trade-off. This hatred and neglect of Jigglypuff would continue into the next Smash title. Not only would she be considered the worst character in the entire game for Smash 4, but she would go the entire game's life without receiving a single buff. Smash Ultimate, she's still not nearly as good as she was in Melee, but at least they gave her some buffs in the patch updates. Kirby is the first character I always think of when it comes to this topic. He went from being the #2 character in the entire game in Smash 64 to currently being considered the second worst character in Melee. At some point, he was also considered to be the worst character in Melee. Why does Sakurai hate his own characters? Every character from the Kirby series starts off really good, and then he ends up making them worse in the next iteration. One of the biggest nerfs Kirby got was to his mobility. Every single mobility stat Kirby has is worse than it was in Smash 64. In my opinion, it's the most noticeable for his air mobility since it made his recovery worse and it's harder for him to land when he's being juggled. Probably the biggest nerf he got was to his up tilt. Kirby's Smash 64 up tilt is one of the most absurd moves in Smash history. The hitbox is so massive and disjointed, like look at this. It doesn't have that much end lag either, so it's amazing in neutral, combos, and pressuring shields. In fact, Kirby has a shield break setup he can do just spamming up tilt on shield. Being the second best character in 64, he was far more than his up tilt though. A lot of his attacks had good range and kill power, and Melee got rid of basically all of it. His up tilt is far worse. His downer, which used to come out on frame 4, comes out on frame 18 now and has less hits on the attack. Basically all of his attacks are noticeably weaker and or have more lag in some way. One of the biggest offenders is what they did to his dash attack. He used to have a dash attack like Jigglypuff's, and then they gave him this. And look, I know it's a reference to his burn ability from the Kirby games, but it doesn't change the fact that this move sucks. They also messed up his throws. You can mash out of his back and forward throw, and he can even SD by using them. Even after Melee, Kirby has never been good. He managed to be a mid tier in Brawl, then after that, he's just been a low tier. You know what though? This doesn't sit right with me. Kirby being canonically the strongest character in Smash, he should be better competitively. I vote we give him his 64 up tilt back. If you agree, let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there's any other characters you believe got massively downgraded across the Smash games. And don't forget to like the video and sub if you want more Smash content. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.